Welcome to The Hive is Alive from Apiary Digital. I'm your host, Tess Berry. On this episode, we will be discussing the recent news about Cambridge Analytica and Facebook and what advertisers need to know. As people have seen, a company called Cambridge Analytica accessed the information of over 50 million Americans from Facebook. This data was then utilized by Cambridge Analytica to build psychographic profiles of users and then target users with messaging with the goal of influencing elections. We discuss how this data was collected and utilized, how consumers are reacting to this news, and, most relevant to this podcast, what this means for advertisers. How can we, as digital marketers, think about data and privacy moving forward? Hello, today we are joined by Apiary founder Karen Amundsen. Hello, Karen.
Hi.
And we are also joined by Apiary lead analytics consultant Rachel Factor.
Hello.
Welcome. So to get started, could you each tell us a bit more about what exactly happened and how this happened?
I can start with that. So the story goes that a man named Alexander Kogan wrote an app for Facebook. And this app was in the form of a quiz. And when users start this quiz, think something like, which Sex and the City character are you? Things that are really seemingly innocuous. They go in, they start the quiz, and then they're asked to consent to some permissions. And then the app goes in and can scrape data from your profile, scrape data from your friend's profile. And it turns out it can actually scrape call metadata as well. And then this guy, Alexander Kogan, he ended up selling the data to Cambridge Analytica, which was in violation of Facebook's policies. So that's really the big issue that Facebook has. However, Facebook has come out to say that this was not a data breach. It's something that the news is kind of falling over themselves, talking about how, Facebook was hacked. They weren't hacked. This was using Facebook's tools, developer tools, as they were intended. And so that's kind of what is so scary about this, is that pretty much anybody at the time could go write an app, scrape data from Facebook, sell it off without much interruption from Facebook's policies or anyone really. And Facebook has since updated their policies around, what apps can collect from profiles, but the damage has been done, and a lot of apps have been doing this supposedly. This is just one case where they got caught.
And then I think, kind of where I think we're starting to think about this is, of course, as individuals and consumers, we want to know how our data is being used. It's, certainly a hot topic. But then we also, as a client-focused organization running digital media and, helping clients to spend money on Facebook, we also want to be looking out for the interests of our clients, which both is how do we drive revenue for them and improve performance? And then also how do we help them to look out for their customers and help to steer them in a direction to where, we don't want to be helping them to spend money on things that maybe aren't in line with the values of their company and what they want to do with their customers. And so I think, one of the interesting questions that we're trying to work out is, does this change anything from an advertiser standpoint?
In the context of, where is kind of Facebook going from here? And I don't think it's going anywhere, by the way. I don't know about inventory or how that's going to work, but I do know that they still have the strongest data set in the world. And you do hear about people saying, well, delete Facebook, I'm going to get off Facebook, and then go to, Instagram, not even realizing that it's owned by the same parent company. And so the breadth of information that Facebook has, because it has so many properties as well, is something that is quite powerful. They can rebrand themselves, even if this is kind of, an embarrassing moment for them, through one of their other very popular social media sites. I just saw a graph recently that said, WhatsApp is probably one of the most used social media platforms. I guess it's more of a messaging app, but still. And so Facebook is capturing all of those text interactions and collecting that data, collecting your call data when you have WhatsApp on your phone. So I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're going to have more opportunities for advertising. The analogy I'm seeing here with Facebook, it reminds me of McDonald's and the McDonald's debate. And does McDonald's make people fat, or do people's choices make them fat? And from here, I'm seeing it well, is Facebook preying on people Is this set up so that Facebook can just take your data? They're making you insecure, or are people making choices that makes their data insecure or just gives their data away? And I actually think that it's probably a combination of both, where Facebook does allow this to happen. They have very lax policies on how data is collected and who gets to see it. But at the same time, everyone I've ever met had no problem, just putting their name, their place of birth, and where they live and where they work, and all of their interests and all of their friends, and just an enormous amount of information about them personally for free, not knowing that they were very much the product being sold rather than being given something for free. So I see a real issue with Facebook isn't fixing this, but there's some personal responsibility around how to protect your data. Not that anybody is teaching anyone this. It's not something you learn in schools. Most of our parents, they didn't grow up in the digital age. They're not savvy in this regard. And so there's no one to teach anyone this unless you're going out to get the information yourself. And I really think that we should be putting more pressure on companies like Facebook to teach people this. I mean, I'd feel a little bit better about if the next time someone logged onto Facebook, they weren't allowed to continue with their experience until they completed a video about data security and the kind of information that they should be sharing on the web and what Facebook actually does with the information that they give them. To me, that's kind of the ethically right thing to do, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I think another thing, what like the textbooks will tell you about the McDonald's business model is they're not really in the business of hamburgers. They're actually in the business of real estate, and hamburgers are just kind of a means to an end in the real estate business. I don't know if that's still true today, but I think, historically that's like what you would see in a textbook. And I think Facebook is the same, like the business model is a means to, it's of course, like it's an ad business, and the underlying backbone of that is data. And I think as we have more emerging technologies like AI-driven platforms, the data to fuel those is going to become increasingly valuable. And I think if you like reading some of the headlines, I've seen quotes like "data is the new oil." It's and what that means is the people who control the pipelines are going to be the ones that get wealthy, not necessarily the people with the oil, so to speak, themselves, but the ones controlling the flow of that. So like Facebook's business model overall is just very well poised for that.
Interesting. You both touched on it a bit, how there's the hashtag delete Facebook, and there's a lot of public attention and a bit of outrage over the data collection and what's been happening. So you both mentioned that you don't see Facebook going away anytime soon, but how do you see people changing their behavior in relation to technology brands and privacy? I think we talked a bit about what we would like to see, but is there something that's happening now, or like what's the next year going to look like?
I think this is going to blow over in a matter of months, and it's going to be very rarely mentioned in mainstream news.
Yeah, even like already it went from being the number 1 headline to like the number 5 headline. So I don't think that it's going to have like a huge impact right now. And I think like in terms of advertisers, you have, of course, you have groups like ISBA, which represents the top several thousand digital advertisers in the world, and they're calling for changes, et cetera. But if you look back on what happened with the YouTube brand protection last year, where advertisers found out their ads were being put on, put on like ISIS videos and et cetera, there was a huge outcry. YouTube took some action Google took some action to block that. And then, there were a few advertisers that sort of took their money off of YouTube for a short period of time. And then there's been some changes to the platform, but otherwise the spend is still there. So I also think from an advertiser standpoint, I don't really think this is going to have a big impact. I do think like one change though that Rachel kind of already touched on is more of a move to Instagram. And again, like I think this is actually really great for the Facebook business in a way, because it is kind of give an inflection point to grow the Instagram business, because the average user isn't even aware that it's the exact same company. It's the exact same ad platform. It's the same kind of data policies and user protection. But already we're seeing, very like fewer millennials using, or millennials is like maybe even older. I would say maybe the iPhone generation is sort of not on not on Facebook as much, or if they're on it, it's not really used as their primary platform. And so, that's a really lucrative audience for a lot of advertisers. They're moving over to Instagram more and more. And so that opens up opportunity for growth there.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing from you guys is that Facebook isn't going away anytime soon. Advertisers don't need to start, pulling their money out of Facebook right now. But there is a bit of a greater public awareness of and concern of data privacy. So in this changing climate of users and how they think about technology platforms, how can we as marketers balance the responsibility of user privacy and consent while continuing to commit to client success and reach users through these technology platforms?
I guess I want to have a more solid answer. And I think that the industry as a whole isn't mature enough to really have solid answers to these questions. But I think the point and part of why I am excited that we're doing this podcast is to be opening up the questions in the first place, because I think for a very long time, advertising funds the internet. It gives people all these things that they want, and it enables us to monetize the internet, which is really beneficial for everybody. And so it's because there's this benefit, I think it has shut down conversation and questioning and thinking on, well, maybe what if there is a way that we can help businesses to drive phenomenal return on their investment and give users more visibility and control over what their data is that's being shared and how it's being used. I feel really good that we're opening up conversations about these things. I feel nervous about the implications of how it will be perceived by clients listening, but I hope that the interpretation will be that we're really trying to fight for their interests in a way that helps to position them in favorable light to their customers.
Well, we're in a unique position as the spenders of the money to be demanding some of these things as well as making these recommendations to clients. I don't know of a single client that I work with that wants to invade anyone's privacy or wants to violate, anybody's trust. So, I think if we kind of lay out possibilities of how they can still earn money, but allow people to give them data, in a consenting manner, enthusiastically consenting manner. Here's another analogy for you. That's a very sex positive. In the sex positive community, that's a thing where you say, I don't want you just consenting. I want you enthusiastically consenting because it's going to be better for you. You're going to get better search results. You're going to get better products that you're more interested in. We're not going to waste your time with things that you're not interested in. And so we have to convince the user that is something that they want. And it's on us as marketers to be doing that.
So I think one thing coming out of this whole thing, which I actually think is really positive for Facebook's business, is that in the long run, I think the CPCs for ads is going to go up, because you have a few things happening. You're going to have some users, not a lot, but there's the hashtag delete Facebook movement. And then maybe you'll have, people who are fed up who just use the platform a little bit less. And then you need to get rid of all these sort of fake accounts. And then you have fewer users. And what that means is less inventory for ads. And if the demand for advertising remains relatively steady, that means the cost is going to essentially go up. So the cost per click is going to go up. Which is good for Facebook because that's their main revenue stream. So I think that, we already have all those factors going. And then when you add in not having the fake accounts and maybe some users leaving the platform, I think overall we're going to see a reduction in inventory, which is going to increase the costs. I don't know. I think too, we are very much I've heard a few people use the word attention economy. And I think that really resonates with me, that it's not as much about time, getting people's time or their eyeballs or their ears. It's about getting their attention. And so if there is fewer ad placements, the ones remaining are going to get more attention and be higher value. So, I'm still reluctant to talk about things like that on a podcast from a digital marketing company, but I still like the idea of what's wrong with asking the questions though, what's wrong with imagining another world. And then whatever that paradigm is, at the end of the day, it's about how do we then strategize and help our clients get to the customers that really want and need their services. And it's a scary question to pose, but it's interesting to think about. And we shouldn't just assume that it's negative for brands and advertisers if something like that were to happen.
Okay, so just taking a step back for what we talked about over this episode, what I'm hearing is that platforms favored seamlessness in use for customers. That's what they prioritized. And now with this news, people are starting to speak up that they are concerned about transparency with data. And although this hasn't been happening before, we as marketers are in a unique position of leverage to push these platforms for a balance of seamlessness and transparency for customers.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think we do have a duty to protect the privacy of users, to be sure that we're not taking too much, but we are often disincentivized to be doing that. It's really easy to take a step too far, so we have to keep ourselves in check.
Thank you for joining us. Please feel free to follow up with thoughts or questions by emailing us at podcast@apiarydigital.com, follow and tweet us @apiarydigital, and subscribe to our show. The Hive is Alive is produced by Apiary Digital Media Collective. Editing help from Holly Hilton. Produced by Miguel Bravo, Tess Berry, and Karen Amundsen. And we will see you around the water cooler.